Welcome everyone to my first ever video for the Razer Academy. My name is James, also known as Jimos in game, and I play a Retribution Paladin in World of Warcraft on the server Stormscale EU. I've achieved multiple rank 1 titles throughout seasons 6, 7, 8 and 9, as well as a 3v3 rating of close to 3k. I also qualified for and played in the World of Warcraft Invitationals at Gamescom earlier this year. I'm very excited to share with you my knowledge, and I do hope that you'll find these videos helpful. In this video I'll be taking you through the new talent system changes in patch 5.0.4 and continuing into the Mists of Pandaria. The first thing you'll notice after logging in after the patch or on the beta is that the talent system has been totally revamped. Blizzard have done away with the cookie cutter style build and they've made the talent choices really difficult. The first tier is the mobility tier. This consists of 3 talents that all increase your movement speed. First of all, we have Speed of Light. This is an instant ability on a 45-second cooldown that requires mana. It increases your movement speed by 70% for 8 seconds. Here's the ability in action. As you can see, it's pretty much similar to the Rogue Sprint. Next up, we have Long Arm of the Law. This is a passive ability that allows a successful judgment to increase your movement speed by 45% for 3 seconds. Here's what this ability looks like. As you can see, I've just judged a target and my movement speed is increased. The judgment cooldown is 5.8 seconds. It's modified by haste, so the default cooldown is 6 seconds. As you can see, the sprint lasts for 3 seconds, so you basically have a 50% uptime on the sprint, which is why I think this talent is most effective in most situations in PvP. Lastly, you have Pursuit of Justice. This is also a passive talent. It gives you a 15% movement speed increase by default and an additional 5% movement increase for each holy power you have, up to 3 holy power. So that's an extra 15% plus the 15% it gives you passively, which will give you 30% movement increase if you have 3 holy power active. So as you can see now, I'm running about 30% faster. The next tier down is the offensive utility tier, or the crowd control tier. This first ability, Fists of Justice, is an instant cast stun on a 20-yard range on a 30-second cooldown. It replaces Hammer of Justice. Next up we have Repentance. This is Incapacitate on a 15-second cooldown and 30-yard range with a 1.5 second cast speed. It lasts for 6 seconds in PvP. Moving on, we have Burden of Guilt. This is a passive ability that allows your successful judgments to reduce the target's movement speed by 50% for 12 seconds. Lasts for 6 or 7 seconds in PvP. The third tier down is the defensive utility tier, effectively increasing your healing done or protecting yourself from taking damage. The first talent in this tier is Selfless Healer. Your successful judgments reduce the cast time and mana cost of your next Flash of Light by 35% per stack, and improves its effectiveness by 35% per stack when used to heal others. This effect will stack up to 3 times. Here you can see the buff in the top right hand corner, and if I use Flash of Light on myself, it will be instant cast with 3 stacks. If used on another player, for example, it should do 100% more healing. Next up is Eternal Flame. This effectively just replaces Word of Glory, but actually adds an additional hot onto the heal. So as you can see, it does the initial direct heal just like Word of Glory, but it does add the hot effects, which lasts for 30 seconds. Pretty much like a Rogue's Recuperate, and it can crit. So it's quite effective, to be honest. Finally, we have Sacred Shield. This is a spell that has a 40-yard range and it's instant cast with a 6-second cooldown. This ability protects the target with a shield of holy light for 30 seconds. The shield absorbs around about 15k damage every 6 seconds, and it can only be active on one target at one time. A thing to note about this ability is the initial Sacred Shield that lasts for 30 seconds that's cast upon you is a magic ability and can actually be dispelled, but the ability that actually absorbs the damage that lasts 6 seconds can't be purged or taken off you. The fourth tier down is another defensive utility tier, and it's probably the most boring tier of them all. The first ability is Hand of Purity. It's an instant cast ability with a 40-yard range and a 30-second cooldown. It's similar to Hand of Sacrifice. However, it reduces the damage of harmful periodic effects by 70% for 6 seconds, making it very useful versus Warlock teams. The next talent is called Unbreakable Spirit. It's a passive ability that says, when your Divine Shield, Divine Protection or Lay on Hands are on cooldown, spending Holy Power will reduce the remaining cooldown by 1% per Holy Power spent, up to a maximum of 50% reduction. So it effectively turns your Divine Shield and your Hand of Protection into 2.5 minute cooldowns instead of 5. The final talent in this tier is called Clemency. It's another passive ability that allows you to use Hand of Freedom, Hand of Protection, Hand of Sacrifice and Hand of Salvation twice before incurring their cooldowns. For example, I can use Hand of Freedom on myself, I can wait for it to expire, and then use it again on myself before it actually incurs the cooldown. This is a really great talent to take when facing teams that have Frost Mages or Hunters. The fifth tier down is probably one of the most fun tiers. It's what I like to call the offensive damage tier. It consists of 3 talents that all increase your overall DPS. The first ability in this tier is called Holy Avenger. It's an instant cast ability on a 2-minute cooldown. Abilities that generate Holy Power will deal 30% additional damage and healing, and generate 3 charges of Holy Power for the next 18 seconds. What this effectively means is that while this ability is active, your Crusader Strike, Judgment, Exorcism, Hammer of Wrath and Hammer of the Righteous will deal 30% additional damage. And each time you use an ability, one of them abilities that generate Holy Power, you'll receive 3 Holy Power bonus instead of just the usual 1. A cool thing about this ability is it actually turns your weapon into the Cleansed Ashbringer when in use, which is actually a really cool cosmetic function to the ability. It's also a great ability to provide a lot of burst damage on demand. Sanctified Wrath is the next talent in this tier. It's a passive ability that increases the duration of your Avenging Wrath by 50% and grants more frequent access to one of your abilities while it lasts. For Retribution Paladins, it reduces the cooldown of your Hammer of Wrath by 50%. This talent does allow you to output a decent amount of damage with Hammer of Wrath, as it reduces the cooldown to 3 seconds from 6. Finally, we come to Divine Purpose. This is another passive ability that allows abilities that cost Holy Power to have a 25% chance to cause the Divine Purpose effect. The Divine Purpose effect means your next Holy Power ability will consume no Holy Power and will be cast as if 3 Holy Power were consumed, and it lasts for 8 seconds. In effect, it just gives you a proc to use any ability that costs 3 Holy Power, such as Word of Glory or Templar's Verdict, for example. This ability does increase your sustained DPS, but doesn't really allow for any on-demand burst, as it's quite RNG whether the ability will actually proc or not. The final talent tier, unlocked at level 90, contains 3 brand new unique abilities that allow you to either deal damage or to heal. Holy Prism, the first talent in this tier, is a 40-yard range spell on a 20-second cooldown. It sends a beam of light towards a target, turning them into a prism for holy energy. If an enemy is the prism, they take holy damage and radiate healing to 5 nearby allies within 15 yards. If an ally is the prism, they are healed and radiate holy damage to 5 nearby enemies within 15 yards. This is what the ability looks like when cast on yourself. As you can see, it healed myself and did damage to enemies nearby. When cast on an enemy target, this is what happens. Causes damage to the enemy target and heals all nearby allies. The next talent is called Light's Hammer. It has a 30-yard range and a 1-minute cooldown. It's instant cast and you can place it wherever you want on the floor, obviously within the certain range. You hurl a light infused hammer into the ground where it will blast a 10-yard area with arcing light for 16 seconds. Arcing light deals holy damage to enemies within the area and healing to allies within the area every 2 seconds. It looks like this. This ability is pretty much useless for PvP. The final talent in this tier is called Execution Sentence. It has a 40-yard range and it's an instant ability on a 1-minute cooldown. A hammer slowly falls from the sky, causing holy damage over 10 seconds. This damage is dealt slowly at first and increases over time, accumulating in a final burst of damage. If used on friendly targets, the falling hammer heals the target over 10 seconds. This healing is dealt slowly at first and increases over time, accumulating in a final burst of healing. This ability scales really well with damage increasing abilities such as Avenging Wrath and Trinket and Guardian. When used alongside all these cooldowns, it actually deals a real massive amount of damage. Here you can see the damage it's doing to the target currently, as well as my Guardian. Final burst of 116k damage on the target dummy. Really does offer great burst potential. Alright then, you should now be familiar with all of the Paladin talents. Here on the screen you can see what spec I think is best for general PvP. Obviously this spec will vary depending on what team you'll end up facing in arena or on what classes you are teamed up with yourself. However, you can base your spec from this build. I've taken Long Arm of the Law for the 3-second sprint from Judgment, paired with Burden of Guilt to allow my judgments to apply a 50% slow on the enemy from ranged. Selfless Healer to give me a powerful off heal to use on teammates. Clemency for the 2 times the use of Hand of Freedom, Hand of Sacrifice and Hand of Protection before incurring their cooldowns. And Holy Avenger for on-demand burst potential separate to Avenging Wrath. And finally Execution Sentence for the extra burst damage and pressure. That's all from today's video. Feel free to leave a comment below or on the Razer Academy website with any suggestions as to what content you would like to see in future videos. I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you in the next one.